everybody. Welcome to Rachel's Reviews. And today I'm very excited. We are talking end of the year 2024 movies, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And I am film critic Rachel Wagner, and my friend Conrado Falco's here.
Hey everybody. Hey
Yay!
Rachel. Long time
I
no
know.
pod for us. So it's nice to be back.
Yeah, I missed chatting. I missed our updates.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah,
We had a good run with the
we
Criterion
did.
Project, and obviously that is all still available for anyone who wants to
Yeah.
listen to any of those.
Yeah, I'm really proud of the little effort that we did, and it was just basically it started out as just a way to get me to watch stuff on the Criterion channel,
Yeah,
and it ended up being something that we made so many friends and had so
that's
many cool
true.
people on, and
We had a lot of great guests, thanks to all of
mhm,
them. If any one
yeah,
of them is listening to this,
yes,
yeah, over the years. So yeah, I
yeah,
had a great time doing it.
hmm,
Obviously, life goes on,
yeah,
and we get new jobs, new
yeah.
priorities, and things like that. But it's good to see that you're still doing so many other podcasts and you're thriving in all of those.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy to be back and talking with you
Yeah.
again.
People like my opinions on Hallmark movies. That's the big one. People
Yeah,
want to
of
know what I
course.
have to say. That's what I was thinking. If anybody should be able to comment on the state of film, I feel like it should be me because like nobody can accuse me of being a snob. I mean, I watch Hallmark movies for my job. Like, like,
That's
I
true.
watch all types. But let's dive in. Let's talk
Yeah.
about. We're going to talk
That's why
about.
you're bringing me on today, because I'm
Yeah,
gonna bring the snobby
you're
point of
gonna be
view to this conversation.
yes. But I saw almost 200 feature films this year,
Wow.
and there were very few that really stood out to me. I think overall it was a very disappointing year in movies. And what's
Hmm.
crazy to me is my top 30 films, I only have four that have a budget of more than $50 million or more. And one of those is Nosferatu, which is 50 million. So,
Hmm.
uh, so that's kind of crazy. The basically like studio filmmaking for me was almost a complete failure this year.
Yeah, not totally surprising because we did have the strike last year, so
Mm,
sure, some things got pushed back to this year, like Dune and Challengers and that kind of thing. But there's also, there were a lot of stuff that felt like they were kind of scrambling to release these big movies, and a lot of them, I agree with you, they for the most part didn't hit for me. But
yeah. I
that's
mean, what
not
do
so
you think?
unusual for me, right? So so I
I
guess to
mean,
be.
but what do you think the if somebody from Disney
Hmm.
or Warner Brothers or something, we're going to come to you and say, give us some advice. What would you say?
Well, they would, first of all, they would like laugh me out of the room right away. But my advice would be to, um, you know what, the filmmaker James Gray said this, which is that I think um, they the studios right now are in a somewhat of a crisis mode where they need to maximize profits, and they have built this system where only the big franchise movies seem to make money for them, right? So they're putting all their chips, or at least until very recently, they were putting all their chips on all of these, like, big name superheroes, IP,
Yeah.
intellectual property stuff. And they were driving a lot of people outside, I think, of the habit of going to the movies. When I was growing up,
With
we used to
streaming.
go, well, there's streaming, but also you used to go to the movie theater. At least and my family used to do it. And you just went there and you decided what to watch when you were
Yeah,
already there.
it's true.
Like, and that feels like it's less and less. It has to be the big tentpole movie. You have to have heard it in advance. A lot of the times you have to get your tickets in advance.
Yeah.
We had some of those like special IMAX screenings here in New York. We had Interstellar and things like that, and those sold out immediately. Within like a few hours, all the tickets
Yeah.
were gone. And if you wanted to see it, you had to, like, just cross your fingers that you were gonna find something. So that's what I would do. I would like definitely go back to having more movies from different genres for with lower budgets, and to generate the interest of like there's something for everybody and the idea of like going to the movies on a more regular basis. You know, I mean, obviously
Yeah.
I'm not a genius. I don't know how exactly I would start going about it, and it probably wouldn't work because I'm totally out of step with the culture of our times. But
Yeah.
that's what I would do.
Yeah, I mean it's so hard to know because like I mean I thought that I was concerned with Avatar, is it popular enough to sustain this huge budget and this things, and then of course ends up being one of the most successful, the sequel, one of the most
Right.
successful movies of all time. So it's so hard to predict what's going to hit. And you think that if something like the Despicable Me would eventually, like, there would be a
Run out
burnout.
of
No,
gas.
like
Yeah.
now it just, that one
But you
made
know
almost
what?
$1 billion. It just
Yeah,
seems.
Avatar is a great example, though, from what you're saying. And I think that's another thing that I would do is because in the early 2000s, which is when I was, a teenager and starting to get really into movies, we had movies like Lord of the Rings, Spider-Man, even
Yeah.
the pirate movies. And those were big budget, big item movies, but the studios hadn't figured out how to make them yet. So they let the directors and the creatives, the writers, they gave them more freedom to do whatever they wanted. They were like, we don't know how to make these nerd movies. Let the nerds do them. Peter
Mhm.
Jackson, Sam Raimi, and they could do what they wanted. But
But
now they feel like they can do it better. So like, Avatar
yeah.
is something that comes from James Cameron, so he's putting a lot into it. He's a guy
Yeah.
with a vision. So we need more of that, I think.
It's tricky though, because then you have things like whatever Todd Phillips was doing with Joker Folie à Deux. They give him the long leash for that, and it was like a
Yeah.
mess. And
Well, that
and
happened back then too. You had the Hulk
yeah,
with
it's
Ang Lee,
true.
which was a failure. But then for every Hulk, you have a spider. And that's the thing. You need to
Yeah.
be able to have risk. If you don't want to risk anything, you're
Hmm.
not going to create anything worthwhile.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, because the thing is why was it a $200 million risk? There was no need for Joker Folie à Deux to be that expensive, and so then it makes it, yeah. Like for instance, when they took a risk on Deadpool, like that, or
Hmm.
Logan, something like that, where you're doing something a little different than you've done before, or allowing your filmmaker to take a risk, and but it was like a calculated risk. It was a smart risk,
Sure.
you know
Yes.
something like that. That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, you look at something like Top Gun Maverick and you think like, or across the Spider-Verse films, where they're taking an IP and they're doing something that's different and creative with the IP. And I wish that there was more of a kind of a palette for that, and more of a, like, that's, like, I don't mind. It does not matter to me whether something's a part of an intellectual property or an
Hmm.
original idea. People sort of put as, oh, original ideas are that's the gold standard. Well, tell that to Francis Ford Coppola. I mean, this year. It does not mean it's necessarily going to be successful or good if it's original. But it's all about what creativity are you bringing to the project.
Yeah, it's about the people making the movie feeling connected to it
Yeah.
and being able to show what they care about, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of Rachel's Reviews? Do you look forward to Family Movie Night, Female Film Critics panels, or the Talking Disney podcast? If so, please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a Patreon. As a patron, you get to access monthly events such as the watch-alongs and Q&As, where you get to talk to stars and find out the behind the scenes of the movie making industry. And you can pick what I review for Family Movie Night, or even become a guest on the podcast. Podcasts and YouTube channels are expensive, and I really, really could use your help. I would so appreciate it. You also get to be a member of the Facebook group where we talk about all the films that we're seeing, and we have so much fun. Go to patreon.com/hallmarkies and select one of the Rachel's fan tiers. That's patreon.com/hallmarkies.
Yeah. There's just been so many movies to me this year that have been disappointing that I think I went into like with pretty reasonable expectations, and I
Hmm.
left feeling like, even Furiosa, I was disappointed in. I didn't like it as much as
Yeah.
most people. And then, I don't know, like, there's Moana 2 was disappointing.
Hmm.
I mean, I didn't have any hopes for this Mufasa, but the Lord of the Rings, that I was pretty hopeful that this animated Lord of the Rings movie would be good. That one
Yeah,
wasn't
right.
That was disappointing. So it's
So
just yeah.
why don't we get into the predictions thing? Because
Yes.
some people listening to this probably won't know this, but last year in 2023, when the year started, after having been podcasting with Rachel for a couple of years at that
Yeah.
point, and getting a sense of what she likes and doesn't, I attempted to predict what her favorite movies of that year were going to be, and I don't remember how I did that first year. I think I had a couple,
You did
maybe
pretty good
one.
because I think you had
Yeah.
Barbie on, and I think you had
Mm-hmm.
the Holdovers, which was a very good get. That was a
Yeah.
very good pick.
Okay, that is a good pick. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so
that
I
was
did
very
well.
good.
I tried to do the same thing this year. I didn't do quite as well, I don't think, right? But I would love to
Yeah.
talk about what I picked
Yeah,
and
let's do
tell you
it.
why I did it, and you'll tell me what you ended up thinking of the
Okay.
movies, right? So my first pick was um Blitz. Blitz, which is the movie. Did you see that one?
I have not. I haven't seen it
Okay.
yet.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's the thing. That movie back then at the beginning of the year, I heard, oh, Steve McQueen, director of like 12 Years a Slave and Saoirse Ronan, and it's about World War II. And I thought that was gonna be like I was trying to find a prestige one of the
Mm.
Oscar movies. What Oscar movie might Rachel like? It made me think of something like Belfast or something. I knew there was gonna be a little
Oh,
kid in the
yeah.
movie, and I thought, oh, this might be like,
Oh, that's
might have a
smart.
lot of heart, a lot of emotion, and it's probably going to be a big Oscar play.
It's
Well, it
got
turns
some play
out,
for Kate Winslet, right? Isn't she in
you
that?
mean first? No, that's Saoirse Ronan is in it. I think she might have gotten
Oh,
something, but in
yeah.
general, the movie has kind of disappeared. It's not been the big Oscar
Oh, okay.
success that I thought it was going to
It's
be.
so hard to know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to know, but I thought, with Saoirse and with Steve McQueen, I thought it was definitely, and being World War II movie, I thought this is definitely going to be in there, and it kind of disappeared. So, and you
Nice.
haven't even seen it, so I
I
guess
haven't
that's
seen
why.
it.
Which of the Oscar movies do you think I would have been a good prediction to have made instead? Which one are
Oh,
you
good
into?
prediction. I
What
don't
did you
know.
end up liking out of
So
the
my
stuff?
favorite of the Oscar buzzy movies, my favorite is A Real Pain. I
Oh
don't know if that
yeah.
counts, but I really did enjoy that. And then The Brutalist I really did think was a tremendous achievement in
Mm-hmm.
filmmaking. Like it's
Yeah.
brutal, it's a long set and but I you just watch it and you just think I cannot believe this was made. I can't
Mm-hmm.
believe anybody greenlit this thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I
And
thought
made for a small budget
impressive.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I
Yeah, I
don't
really
really have
like both of those movies as well.
yeah, I thought
Um,
they were good. Um let's see. The Substance. I know you hated that, but I liked it. And Nosferatu.
oh,
Those
Nosferatu. Yeah, I
those would
like
be
that. I like that too.
the
Um,
contenders
mhm.
in my top 30, I would say.
All right. I would not have predicted either The Substance or Nosferatu to make your list. I have to be
Yeah.
honest. Like usually I don't think of you as a
Yeah,
horror kind of person, but
I did pretty good with horror this year. I really enjoyed
mhm.
Strange Darling. I
Oh
liked
yeah.
I liked Heretic. I saw the TV Glow. Um
Mm-hmm.
those all made my top 30. So
All right.
not to Your Monster, that's horror adjacent. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I did pretty good.
Yeah, my next prediction was Inside Out 2 because
Yeah.
I figured there had to be some animation on
Yes.
the list. But Inside Out 2 did not end up being your favorite animated movie of the year at all, right? What
No,
did you think of it?
it is in my top 30.
Oh,
I
okay.
liked it better than I expected because I thought the promotions were pretty bad. And
Mm-hmm.
I still think, I mean, like most of the problems that I was concerned about actually proved to be a problem, but like it was still so well done that I was
Mm-hmm.
fine. I still enjoyed it. Um, but like, because to me, it doesn't make sense if you already have fear and you already have fear and anger, like why, like then we have anxiety, like I don't know, and anxiety felt like an odd choice for them, but like that's a
Mm-hmm.
specific medical condition, like it's as opposed to like an emotion, I don't know. So I thought it was a weird choice, but they pulled, in my opinion, they pulled it off, and it was quite heartfelt, and so I did enjoy it, and definitely more than a lot of recent Pixar. So that was good.
Mhm.
My favorite movie of the year, my favorite animated film of the year was The Wild Robot. I just
Right. Which
absolutely
I wish
loved that
I had
movie.
put as one of the predictions. I had no
Oh,
idea that
okay,
the Whale
yeah.
Robot was coming out. Like at the time I did not know about it. Um
That's
so but that
a
was
good
so
prediction, yeah.
what do you think of the year as a whole in animation? I have to say The Wild Robot is the only animated movie I think that I saw this year.
Oh, really? Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and I
been an
liked it.
interesting year for animation. I mean, technically the Looney Tunes movie is technically considered part of this year, but it doesn't come out in theaters until
Yeah,
February.
I was
But
gonna say there's two animated movies that I'm really looking forward to that I actually three. I really want to see this movie Flow, which I heard a lot
oh yeah.
about, and I want to catch up with. I want to
Yeah.
watch the Looney Tunes movie, which I'm very jealous that you got to see because I'm
Yeah.
really looking forward to that. And also the Wallace and Gromit movie, I'm really looking forward
Yeah.
to. So,
I the Walls and Gromit made my top 30. I really enjoyed it, and I was nervous because the Chicken Run movie was disappointing, and so I was like,
mm,
oh, I hope that they don't have a sequel problem.
mhm.
But this I enjoyed it as much as Were Rabbit, if not more so.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I really liked it. So will be interesting to see what you think. But
Yeah.
then there was also a little indie called Chicken for Linda that I
Oh,
really
yeah.
enjoyed. And you can, if you still have Criterion, you can watch it on there. But
Oh.
beautiful animation, the watercolor kind of style. This Sebastian Laudenbach, he is like a one-man show that he does these animated films, and I really love that. And it's just a sweet little story about
Hmm.
a mom. She scolds her daughter, and she took her ring. She didn't really take it, she just lost it. And so when she finds it, she's like, oh, I feel bad for scolding you. What can I do to make it up? And she says, I want you to make chicken with peppers, which is her favorite meal, and the meal that she had with her dad. Well, the mom is a terrible cook, horrible.
Mm.
But she's like, I want to do this for my daughter. And so they go
Hmm.
around town in Paris, and they are finding all the ingredients for chicken with peppers, and she gets some
Oh,
help. And
wow.
it's
That sounds really
just
lovely.
it's really cute. Yeah, it's really lovely, great animation, cute story. So that's up there. So yeah, it's been a decent year for animation. I mean, Moana 2 was disappointing.
Hmm.
Despicable Me 4, not great. So obviously you have your misses. Kung Fu Panda
Hmm.
4,
Hmm.
I wish it was better. But there've been some another one that I enjoyed in my top 30, Mars Express. This is kind of
Oh, yeah. That's been
played
around for a while, right? Didn't you, weren't you
yeah,
talking about that last Christmas, maybe?
yeah, it's been around for a bit, but it finally got the release this year. And it definitely is like very Blade Runner inspired, and you can see all the
Hmm.
different like influences on it, but I think it's still its own thing. Ghost in the Shell is obviously it's very
Hmm.
influential, but I think it's still enough its own thing and its own style. And so
Hmm.
that I really recommended. And Flow, beautiful.
Hmm.
And I actually got to interview the director, against Zilbado. So if people are listening and
Oh, wow.
yeah, on this channel, so that was neat. And just a beautiful movie, that you could relax to. You could just put it on and just sort of relax, because it has like very little plot. But
Hmm.
people are saying that they think it might win best, which would be
Well, I will
very
tell you,
cool.
me and my friends, including some people who have been guests on Criterion Project before, we do a Oscar fantasy league, which is kind of like
Yeah.
a football fantasy league, but for the awards season, and and we have animated feature as one of the categories. I got the Wild Robot, which I thought was gonna be the winning pick when we were doing our draft, and our friend Trevor, he got Flow, which was not a top
Uh,
pick at the time. And Flow has been cleaning up the Critics
yeah.
Awards. It's been winning everything. So I think that the tide has started to feel like, oh, maybe Flow is going to get it. I think there's a possibility that things kind of like revert to something a little bit more traditional. An
Yeah.
American movie like Wild Robot probably would be my guess
Yeah.
out of the ones that are in contention. But I also wouldn't be surprised if Flow just keeps, gaining momentum as
That
the
would be
year goes
very
on.
exciting. I mean, there's never been an independent film, unless you consider like
The Miyazaki's, I guess.
Miyazaki. Yeah, there's never been an independent film that has won. I mean, the like the closest to something like Rango, but that was from Paramount. So like,
No.
it was a little bit
Yeah,
has a bit of an indie feel to it, but it wasn't.
definitely.
But yeah, that would be very
That would be
exciting.
cool.
I think it would be very
Um,
cool. So,
Talking
well,
about animation, though, my other prediction for you, I don't know if you saw this movie. I forgot what it was completely. It's a movie called That Christmas. I think it's another animated
yeah,
movie, and it was a Christmas movie. So I said, okay, I got to put that on the list of the
yeah, that
predictions.
was a very sweet film. I really enjoyed it. I did, it just went. I think it just went straight to Netflix, but
Mm-hmm.
I did really enjoy it. It's very sweet. It's Richard Curtis who did like Love Actually and
Okay, so
all
that
those
makes
things.
sense. That makes sense why
Yeah,
I would have put it on the
yeah.
predictions list. Yeah.
It's a good movie. I liked it. Yeah, that makes a lot of
Mhm.
sense.
So it was
uh,
that.
the
My
Christmas movie that I loved the most from
uh-huh.
this year is a little movie called The Best Christmas Pageant Ever.
Oh, right.
I thought it was so well written and so well done and like the everything you could hope for a faith-based film, like it done right. Like
Mm-hmm.
we wanted it to be done right. And I actually got to interview the director of that one as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really enjoyed it. And I've talked to people that are like atheists and seen the movie and they even liked it. So
Hmm.
it's just very well done for definitely for what it is.
Okay.
So yeah. But
So
let's talk about oh wait, go ahead.
I had
Sorry.
two last predictions. My
Okay.
five were Blitz, Inside Out, That Christmas, and then I had one that I think it's a one big winner for me and one huge failure. The winner is Wicked Part One,
Yes.
which ended up being one of your favorites of the
Yeah.
year, right?
Yes, it was. Yes.
Okay, and the
Yeah.
big failure was the movie If, which I thought,
Yeah.
what is could be like a somewhat of a franchise, big budget movie that Rachel might like, and
Yeah.
because you like A
That
Quiet Place, I thought maybe Krasinski had something going on, but that was a huge fail. I didn't see it, but that was a big flop, right?
well, it did actually like decently for what it is. It was just I think they overspent on it, but like for an
Mm.
original property, it wasn't that bad, but it was disappointing. And I think I titled my review If, and I promise I'm not, if doesn't work, and I promise I'm not a bad person, because like you wanted to like it because it had such obvious like heart and like people, like it was just obvious he was like doing this for his John Krasinski was doing this for his girls, and wanted something really intimate and very sweet. But it just there just wasn't, the script needed more work. Like I think there was
Mm.
stuff there, but it was just like them ambling around the city. Like there was just
Hmm.
no story.
Hmm.
And so it's like, I just think if it had like a couple more passes, I think is what it needed. But yeah, it's
Hmm.
that I can see why you had that as a guess.
Yeah.
And Wicked, I did you like it? Did you like Wicked?
Uh, Not really. Not really. There were moments that I liked. I thought the singing from Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande was pretty good. I thought Ariana
Mm-hmm.
Grande was funny,
Do
but I
you like
didn't
the
like.
show?
I do like the show, and here's the thing. I've seen the show I think twice on Broadway,
Okay.
and the when the first act ends with Defying Gravity, that's one of the best times I've had in the theater. I enjoyed the show
Mm,
fine, but that ending of that first act, I'm like, oh my God. And she's flying and she's singing, and I'm like, oh my God, you feel exhilarated.
yeah.
And so I thought at the very least the movie was gonna try to capture a little bit of that, but I think that they kind of fumbled the end of the song, and I couldn't get over it that they kind of do this weird intercutting, and they cut away from her, and the movie doesn't
Yeah.
end with the last note of the song, which is such a great cut to black moment. So I was just kind of like, I wasn't enjoying it that much. I didn't like the production. I thought that they shot it in a weird way where everything looked like it didn't look like a real world. It looked like a theme park
Mm,
section. It looked like they had done a Wicked section at Disneyland or something,
mm,
or at Universal Studios, which I guess would be more obvious. And that's kind of what it looked like when they were dancing in the streets. I was like, this looks like the Harry Potter world at Universal instead of the actual Harry Potter movie, or something like
yeah.
that.
I
So
could
yeah.
see that. I mean, I didn't mind that. Like I'm not looking for like gritty realism in my
Mhm.
Wicked movie, so I didn't mind that. But yeah, I do agree on Defying Gravity that they did kind of hurt the momentum by keep. And I know that there are moments of that in the stage show. I hope you're happy
Yeah.
now. Where they kind of
Hmm.
stop and hurt your cause forever. I hope you think you're clever and all that.
Hmm.
And so there are some like talk singing and some interruptions and different things like that. But in the movie, it did kind of feel like, oh my gosh, they stretched out this song like very
Hmm.
long. And but I still am not convinced that it needed to be two movies, even though I enjoyed it. Um, I
Hmm.
I think that it was better than I maybe somewhat low expectations or nervous expectations helped a little bit because I do think it was better
Mm.
than I expected. But I'm still thinking like, how are you going to make a whole second movie off of Act Two? There's only three memorable songs in Act Two of Wicked,
Hmm. My
and
guess is they're gonna write some new songs
they're
for
going to
it.
have to. They're
Yeah.
going to have to. And because it's almost all reprises or like forgettable songs.
Yeah.
And so it's a very top heavy musical. And so I wouldn't be surprised. Like most people I know preferred Infinity War over Endgame. I don't know if I'm in that camp,
Oh.
but I wouldn't be surprised if it's kind of similar with Wicked that people
Hmm.
prefer part one over part two. But we'll just have to wait and
We'll see.
see.
We'll see. We'll
Yeah, we'll
see.
just
I
have to
will
wait and see.
say I have already written down my predictions for
Oh,
next year's Rachel favorites,
that'll be
and we will
fun.
find in a year from now whether or not Wicked 2 is in my predictions and whether or not Wicked 2 is one of your favorites. So we'll
Yeah.
see.
I mean, just for how disappointing mainstream studio films were for me this year, like Wicked was a highlight. I do think it was one of the more
Mhm.
successful offerings from the studios. But I guess why don't we talk about just do you want to just share like your top five?
Sure.
Yeah.
My favorite movie of the year, which is, I think it's not a movie you and loved. I don't know if you liked it or not. I can't remember off the top of my head. But for me, the movie that made the biggest impression by far is the movie Hard Truths,
Mhm.
which is directed by Mike Lee and stars Marianne Jean-Baptiste as a woman who is just a deeply unpleasant, deeply troubled
Yeah.
woman who just is, it's such a it feels weird to call her a negative Nancy, but she is so negative, and and she's clearly like struggling with rage and depression, and she thinks everyone's against her, and she's complaining all the time. And I found the experience so rewarding because it was an interesting case of seeing a character in a movie that was both very exasperating. She was also so exasperating that I found her funny a lot of the time. I mean, her insults I thought were very funny a lot of the time, even though they were very cruel, and she was incredibly mean to her family and the people who love her. But at the same time, it felt like a little bit of a cautionary tale. And I also
Mhm.
felt for her, and I was like, oh my God, you could become a person like that if you let the world around you,
Mhm.
and your insecurities and your hurt, get to you without working on it and without talking about the things that are hurting you and having someone to talk with them openly and
Mhm.
and carrying it all yourself. You can end up in a situation like that. So to me, that was very very well done.
Yeah.
um
Yeah,
uh,
I did end up going fresh on it.
mhm.
I think when we were chatting on Twitter or whatever, it was my response to the trailer.
Mhm.
I was like, oh, this seems rough.
Mhm.
But and it is. She's a lot, and she is
Yeah.
really difficult. But there's some movies that win me over by the sheer strength of a performance, and
Yeah.
this is certainly one of them. She is
Marianne
absolutely
Jean-Baptiste, yeah.
amazing in this movie. There's a scene towards the end where she cries, and
Mhm.
it is one of the most powerful
Oh,
like crying
yeah.
scenes I've seen in a long time.
It
Uh,
was so,
for
so
her character
emotional.
who's been
Yeah.
so bitter and tightly wound, for her to lose it was
Hmm.
extremely well done.
Definitely agree. I think that the whole cast is really good. I mean, obviously, Marianne Jean-Baptiste has been singled out as an incredible performance because it is, but I do think that some of the supporting cast is just as good. Like Michelle Austin, who plays her sister, who I think that's what I appreciate about the movie too, that there is this counterbalance too. The sister lives a much less heavy life, and she's able to enjoy life, and she has these beautiful daughters who are very kind to her, and it's a lot of fun. And the scene where the families come together and to see how they interact with each other, and how different they are, but how they're trying to connect and they can't. All of that like really touched me in a really profound way.
Yeah.
Also, to Wayne Barrett, who plays her son, I thought was also really good. He speaks very little in the movie, but I think his performance, his physicality really gets at a kind of stunted, person who has been really affected by the family that he has, and the
Yeah.
limitations, and dealing with his own kind of probably versions of depression and whatever else is going on with him. So I was, yeah, it really moved me. It's definitely the movie that I thought about the most. It's also the movie that I've quoted the most. I keep saying disgusting like she does, and they're accosting me anytime someone like is bothering me. I keep saying things like that. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely my
I can
favorite
see.
of
I
the
can
year.
see. My favorite was the Wild Robot. I just
Hmm.
loved to me, the message I took away from it is the transformative effect of nurturing others.
Hmm. Hmm.
The robot that even though it's a robot, like he can't help but be changed from the process of nurturing this goose. And
Yeah.
I thought that was just beautiful and moving. And I really appreciated the fact that, especially for DreamWorks, that they had the guts to like not kidify it hardly at all. There were, I mean, you
Hmm.
had like the fox, but he wasn't like making like modern jokes. He wasn't like, a kind of a comedic sidekick very much. Like, and it was pretty serious for a family
Uh,
film, in my
Not only
opinion.
was it serious, but it also had a lot of dark humor, which is what
Yeah,
surprised
yeah,
me when, especially in the first part of the movie. I think I was
yeah.
really surprised by the movie's relationship to death in the animal kingdom, and in the
Mm-hmm.
wild. Like, there's a lot of talk of like the animals that don't survive, the animals that eat other animals, and that kind of
Yeah,
thing,
that's
which I
true.
thought was really, really exciting. And I've
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed the movie as a whole, but I think that's why I felt a little bit disappointed at the end when all the animals kind of like get together, and it kind of like loses the conviction of the fact that, I felt like we were setting up for like this is how, the circle of life kind of thing of like
Like we had this
animals.
moment, and then we have to go, we have to go back to.
Yeah,
I
like,
can see that.
like
That's
it
fair.
wanted to have a very happy ending, which makes sense, but I think it kind of left behind a little bit of that clear-eyed thing about like living in this world, living in the wild is, includes violence and includes death, which I thought was a really refreshing thing to include in a kids movie to begin with.
I can see that. Yeah. Well, what's your second favorite?
My second favorite is a movie that I saw at the New York Film Festival. I think it had a qualifying run for international feature, but I think it's going to be more available early next year in January or February, which is called Universal Language. Have you heard of this movie, Rachel?
I haven't. I haven't seen that one.
Okay,
What's
so
that?
this is the Canadian movie. This is a very unique movie. It's a Canadian movie, but it takes place in Winnipeg, in a version of Winnipeg that where the majority of the population speaks Farsi and is Iranian or Persian. So it is a very strange kind of like version of Canada where, it's almost like instead of Quebec where they all speak French, you had this part of Canada where they all speak Farsi and they all live like they're in Iran kind of. And it's this very funny, deadpan, very creative, funny
Huh.
movie. A little bit in the style of Wes Anderson, I guess, in some ways, or like something or Aki Kaurismäki or things like that. The director is called Matthew Ranking. He is from Winnipeg, and he has a fascination with Iranian movies like Kiarostami and Jafar Panahi and that stuff. So it is very influenced by those movies as well. Reminded me a lot of the movie The White Balloon, if you remember that one,
Oh
Rachel, with
yeah.
the girl who wants to get the goldfish and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot. It's kind of an ensemble movie. There's a lot of great visual jokes. Also, a lot of like Jacques Tati kind of influence in the backgrounds, and
Mm.
you have at the center, you have these two little girls who find, a bunch of money frozen in a piece of ice, and you wanna get it out of the ice so they can use the money. And there's a lot of different characters, very funny recurring gags involving turkeys and things like that. It was really up my alley. I thought it was hilarious. We saw it in a packed a theater at the film festival, and everyone was laughing up a storm. It's a very kind of like dry sense of humor, but I think it's very funny and it's very sweet. It's about families connecting with each other, and obviously language barriers and feeling isolated and not. And so super
I'd say
creative
it was a
movie.
pretty good year for comedies. Is
Yeah.
that, and then I thought Hitman was pretty funny,
I thought Real
and
Pain was also very funny.
A Real
Obviously also touching,
Pain,
but Real Pain, yeah.
Hundreds of Beavers.
Oh, Hundreds of Beers, hilarious. I did love
Hmm.
that movie too. Yeah.
So pretty good year for comedy.
Hmm.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. My
Yeah.
number two is Ghostlight. Did you ever get to see
Uh-huh.
Ghostlight?
No, I heard about this, but why don't you tell me a little more?
Yeah. So this is about this man. They've had a tragedy in his family. His son has died. He's kind of a gruff, burly man. He works construction, and is a man of few words. And he has a teenage daughter and a wife. And one day he's working construction outside of this community theater, and run by
Hmm.
Dolly De Leon, and
Hmm.
they're doing their like dramatic exercises and their other stuff, and they're like, we need another person to do these, this exercise, whatever. And Dolly's seen this guy. She knows, she's they've developed a little bit of a friendship, and so she goes outside and she's like, hey, will you come help us with this? And they basically recruit. I'm like, this could be a whole new thing for community theater. Hey, you're gonna be in our play. But he ends up, through various contrivances, he ends up being in their production of Romeo and Juliet. And Dolly is Juliet, so it's like an older, female playing, but it's that's all part of the plot, and it's fun.
Hmm.
And it I just thought it was really moving and lovely. And what's really cool is that this father, mother, daughter are real life father, mother, daughter. The leads
Hmm.
are
Hmm.
real life family, which I think
Hmm.
just gives it like an extra chemistry, authenticity. And somebody who loves community theater as much as I do, it
Right.
really like hit all my buttons. And
Wow.
I loved it. So
That's great. That I should catch up with that. That sounds really
yeah,
good.
I think you'd like it. It's
Hmm.
if you can get over, the only real complaint that I've heard about it is people saying, oh, there's no way that they would do this. And I'm like, have you spent that much time with people in community theater? Like, I didn't feel like the premise was like crazy, man. Maybe it was a little bit of a stretch that they would do Romeo and Juliet, but I was fine with that.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies.
I don't know if we should do like a whole top five. Do you want to just list off some of your other favorites?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I have a couple more that I can talk about. I would say there are three movies that have really stuck with me this year.
Mm-hmm.
Hard Truths, like I said, Universal Language, and the third one is the movie Juror Number Two. Did you see that one?
No, it was they didn't do a critic screening, and I just didn't get
It
around
was
to see it.
really botched by Warner Brothers. Our
Why?
good
That's so
friend David
frustrating.
Zaslav. Kind of like they really did wanted to dump it. It had a very small release in New York City, but I think it did well enough that it stuck around in theaters for a bit. Now it's on HBO Max, or Max, I guess is what it's called now,
Oh,
for
is it?
streaming, so people can catch up with it. It's a new
Yeah.
movie by Clint Eastwood where Nicholas Hoult plays this guy who is asked to be in a jury. And as he starts hearing the case, he starts to think, oh, maybe I'm the person who did this crime, which is kind of a weird premise of like realizing, oh, the thing that happened to me that I thought was just, you know, a bump on the road I might have actually killed a person and I didn't know about it. And the question of like, should I come forward and say what that realization that I think I did it or not? And obviously things are complicated, because of the person who's on the stand, the situation that he's in, he has a family. And I think that's what I found very interesting about the movie is that I think it presented a moral conundrum that it was really, really got at something really, really interesting and very truthful about what does it mean to do the right thing in the context of many things, right? What does it mean to be good to your family? And I think the movie is really exploring the idea that a lot of the time we justify our actions by thinking, well, we're doing it for the people that we love. I'm doing this for my family. If I say the truth and I'm sent to jail, my son or my daughter is gonna grow up without a father, and I really want to be there for them. And I'm a good person, so I did. So so there's a lot of questions about like, what does it mean to do good? What does it mean to what are the things that we justify in our actions, and what does it mean to be a righteous person, and what does it mean to enact justice? I think Clint Eastwood, a very old man who's had a long career of having a sort of ambivalent relationship to um, power and justice. His movies a lot of the time, he makes movies like American Sniper, which are obviously about the experience of being in combat, but also have an ambivalent view of the military and war, a lot of the time. And then you have something like Gran Torino, which has like violence taken into, a person taking violence in their own hands, or Richard Jewell, which I love, which is so much about like the media and the powers. Like, so this movie, I think, really encapsulates a lot of his concerns in a really great way. It gives a great throwback vibes to like, back in the 90s when you had those TBS movies that were court procedurals that you just sit down on a Saturday afternoon and you just watch them, but they end up being really good. So that was my experience with your number two. I think everyone now that's on Max, whenever you have a lazy afternoon on a weekend, just put it on, let it wash over you, and really experience something really powerful. Toni Collette is also really great in the movie. She plays the prosecutor.
Oh man, I really want to see that. Well, we already talked a little bit about Real Pain. I loved that as somebody who has pretty good relationship with most of my cousins. Like it just rang true for me. And they're going on this trip for their grandma, and that they loved. I just did a trip to New York in homage in honor of my grandma. So just a lot of the themes, and I hope that Kieran Culkin wins. I think he could.
I think he could.
I think he's really good in it.
I think he's really great in it. I also think Jesse Eisenberg is really good in it, even though he hasn't gotten as much attention. Obviously, his role is not as flashy as Kieran Culkin, but I do think that the movie, which he also wrote and directed, right, is a really great. I also really love this movie, and I thought it was a great exploration also of, I could see the perspective of the Jesse Eisenberg character a lot. It spoke to me in terms of like, what does it mean to be a reserved person? And, you see the cousin who's very out there. He just says what he means. And a lot of the time that feels uncomfortable and he generates trouble. But at the end, people end up liking him for it, and Eisenberg character who's much more reserved, he ends up being a bit of he doesn't make as much of an impression. And, so that's kind of like the dualities in that movie that are really playing there between the characters. I thought it was a really good character study. I also loved all of the people on the tour. I thought they were all very interesting and they brought unique perspectives. And the tour guide was also a great character. So I think he's a really good writer, and I think I'm looking forward to seeing what he does next.
Yeah, I agree. And I didn't like his first film. His first effort was not for me. So this one, I liked much. I mean, infinitely better. So that was a big surprise. And a movie that I really loved that just went straight to streaming that got kind of buried, but I loved it, is called Musica. And this is semi-autobiographical about by director Rudy Mancuso. He's the star. And he has this, I think it's called synesthesia. Anyway, he has this condition.
Oh, synesthesia, yeah.
Yeah, he hears every little sound. He hears, his senses are all heightened. And I just loved that they turn that into this like whole musical experience. and I was kind of saying like was like my La La Land, like the way that he'll be like a fish market and the slap slap slap, and it all kind of builds and builds and builds until it's this whole musical sequence. And I loved the way it was filmed and the way it was and the romance between him and Camila Mendes, who like they ended up hooking up in real life. So the chemistry is just there. I actually got to interview Rudy because I liked the movie so much. I reached out, and so that was super cool. And his mom, his real mom, plays his mom in the which is fun, and it's also like a tribute to Brazil and his where he's from, and so that's Brazilian music and that tradition, and which is really nice. I really loved it. So and it's on Amazon Prime if anybody wants to check it out.
All right, I had not heard of that one. That sounds also really fun.
I really enjoyed it.
I've been accused of having synesthesia myself, a different kind of synesthesia, where because every word and every letter and every number has a very specific color in my head, which I didn't know was something that's unusual. But like if you if you tell me a word or a letter, I picture them with a specific color, which a lot of my friends, when I revealed that, thought was kind of hilarious.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know what you think if you ever go to watch it. And then I have hundreds of beavers, and this was just so like crazy and exhilarating and fresh.
Very funny.
Very funny. I do think it's a little too long. I
agree.
I wish
think
it was
the middle section gets a little long, right?
I wish there was more of a market for like featurette length things. Like this would have been perfect at like 45. But
it is so influenced by like the Coyote, Roadrunner, Looney Tunes kind of cartoons, and those were short, so that's the kind of humor that works really well in the short form. Even though I do think that, I agree, it got a little long on the tooth in the middle there for me, but I did enjoy it a lot.
I really enjoyed it.
It's such a different kind of movie from what we usually get, and a type of humor that we don't see that often anymore. Yeah.
And the fact that they did it on 150,000 is amazing.
Yeah, with great,
unbelievable,
like very DIY visual effects that work really well because it makes everything even more funny. The fact that all the beavers are people in costumes is really funny. It works really well. Yeah, that's a great movie. I really enjoyed that one.
Others that my top 10, I have the movie Touch. This was out of Iceland. And that was I think it's one of the best pandemic stories. This is set in March of 2020, and he goes, it's a dual time. It's so partly he's going back to try to find this woman that he fell in love with in his 20s, and so you see the relationship play out in the 20s, and then you see him try to find her, and it's in March of 2020, and I just thought it was beautiful, very well acted. So that's one for me, the best Christmas pageant ever. I loved I loved a horror movie called Strange Darling.
Yeah.
I don't know if you got to see that, but it's very subversive. It has a twist that is I thought it was very effective, and what you start out the movie thinking about these characters gets completely subverted by the end, which was and it throws a lot of classic horror tropes on their side, like the whole final girl trope, or serial killer, or these kind of things that you see is challenged and subverted. So I really enjoyed that, and then Wicked and The Brutalist. So do you have any others that you want to talk about?
Let me see. There's a Romanian movie called Do Not Expect Too Much from the End of the World, which I thought was really great. It's a very pretentious movie in some ways, but it's also very funny. I think it's a good comedy about it's basically about this woman who works for a production company in Romania. She's driving around trying to find people to be in what seems to be like a safety video for a company, but in which they want to give it's people who have had accidents at work, but the company's making this video so that they basically so that the people admit that they did something wrong and that's why they got, in an accident, and supposedly to prevent other people from doing it. So, but you'd start to feel like it's kind of like this, kind of like the company taking advantage, of these people, also, taking advantage of this young woman who's driving around for them, and it takes place over a whole day where she's running around. There's a lot of interesting things about the movie. There's a lot of commentary and a lot of stuff. When on her free time, she kind of like posts videos using an Instagram filter as this like very crass, like men's rights type of activist who's like, saying these very misogynistic things online. And she's kind of like saying very provocative things in that way, pretending to be him, even though it's just some. So the movie has a lot of commentary about the way we live now, the way people are exploited in different ways with work and by corporations, and and a lot of that stuff. So if any of that sounds of interest to people, I think this is a very clever, very incisive, also very funny in its own way movie. I
Did
think
you
it's
see
a
that at the
movie
festival, or was that
that was at the festival last year, in 2023, and it had a release early this year in 2024, which is when I saw it, and it's now on movie, so that's definitely available to stream,
Hmm,
and it is a very it's
that's
a
cool. I've
long
heard of
and
it, but
unique
I haven't
movie.
seen it.
Yeah, yeah, I'm curious to see what you make of it, Rachel. I don't know how much it'll be up your alley, but I think it's worth a shot because it's so kind of different and it's doing its own thing.
Yeah.
And then finally, I would say the most fun I had at the movie theater all year, just like from start to finish, I was having a great time, cackling, slapping my knee, just like loving it, was the movie Trap by M. Night
Oh
Shyamalan,
my
with, the
God.
famous Josh Hartnett and his daughter going to the concert.
Yeah.
I just thought that was a riot. I thought I had a great time, all the twists and turns, and how is he gonna get away from this one? And the movie kept changing into different things. So I love M. Night to begin with, and I thought this was one of his best, most entertaining movies. So I know that a lot of people
Oh.
didn't like it at all, but I had a great time, and it's one of my favorites of the year.
Yeah. Wow. Well, there you go. Well,
Mhm.
let us know what you think. If you're listening, what were some of your favorites of the year? We'd love to hear your thoughts. And I'm going to be we have this, and then I'm also going to be doing another best and worst with Monda and Molly, my friends, for so it'll be very interesting. We're going to get lots of perspectives going on this year. So definitely let us know what you think. And I'll put a link down to the Criterion Project if you want to listen to some of those episodes. And if people want to follow you on Letterboxd and other things, how do they do that?
I guess they could find me on Letterbox if you search
Yeah.
my name, Conrado Falco the Third. That's really the social media that I'm most active on these
Okay.
days, and I'm reviewing movies as much as I can. So yeah, that's definitely the place to find me
Cool.
nowadays.
Cool. Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. Check that all out. Make sure you check out Hallmarky's podcast. We've got like interviews with Rudy on there, things like that. So check that out. I've got an interview with Gintz here on the podcast. I'll put that in the description if you want to check out his thoughts on flow and everything. That would be great. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. That really helps a lot. And if you are listening on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Appreciate that. And I have the Patreon group, and that's the biggest way you can support what we're doing. And you can be part of watch-alongs and Q&As and events. And it's really